It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! Oh, I'm still getting my microphone settings right. Okay, it's driving a little high. Apologies, I'm gonna do my best here. But right off the bat, responding to some feedback about wanting something happier. This channel's been kind of heavy of late, so here you go. Also, people asked for more gameplay videos. So this is an adorable little game called Phoning Home. I actually don't know how little it is yet. It's, one of these indie things. I got a press release for it and requested a copy because the name reminded me of E.T. and it had a robot in it. It's definitely got an E.T. Wall-E vibe to it. But this game is surprisingly great. I thought it was going to be really cute and simple. It's actually got some really cool crafting mechanics, a lot of really great exploration, very funny dialogue with the ship's computer, and some combat too. This has been a very pleasant surprise. So you can get it on Steam. It's called Phoning Home, like E.T. Phone Home, only ing, Phoning Home. Played about an hour of it so far, and it is really engaging. I'm really, really, really enjoying it. So, recommendation for you guys here. And again, I did get this game from the publicist, so it is a copy. It was given to me. And that's sort of my rule for reviewing or doing stuff with products. And I want to tell you why. It's very rare that I will review stuff without getting a copy. Something like Andromeda, where it's a big controversy, or a patron suggests, like they ask, or something like that, that I will look at. But for the most part, I will not show a game or a piece of equipment or anything like that without getting at least a demo, because the problem is, once you become known as a person who does something for free, no one will pay you to do it. They'll just go, oh, well, you're going to review it anyway, so we'll keep you off your review list. It is that cynical. It's awful. I hate it. You're not rewarded for doing good things in this business. It drives me crazy. So, when I'm pulling in $3,000 a month on Patreon, hey, maybe that's something. Or if I get a decently paying gig again, hey, maybe I'll start doing that. But right now, since it's just YouTube and Patreon, I can't do anything unless it is provided. I am cutting my own throat if I do that. Okay? Okay. Somebody else asked about timestamps, and somebody else said that I hope they don't mind. They just jump to the gameplay. I did actually put in that girls, Melissa McCarthy Andromeda thing. I did put in the comments that the Andromeda stuff started at around the 15-minute mark. If you want to just jump to that, I have no problem with that. When I do a multi-topic video like that, I tend to put a guesstimate in. Somebody wants specific timestamps. I will try. That's not always possible. I know you can just plug it in, but there's a lot of times where I'm finishing these videos at 3 o'clock in the morning and I am tired. So I do my best, but I'd rather have the regular content than fiddle around with details like that. And, for a minority of people. But when I do put something like that and you want to just jump to the gameplay, of course that's fine. I mean, a huge thing of YouTube is you consume content in the way you want to consume it. And, if I'm making the point of, hey, if you just want to jump to the gameplay, there you go, it's at around this time. I don't mind that. I know there's a lot of diversity in the reason that people come to this channel, and that's great. And I try to sort of keep everybody happy. There aren't enough days in the week anymore, which is a really nice problem to have. But yeah, I mean, I totally get that some people are here because they want strictly video games. Other people are here because they're interested in the more social stuff. The majority of people want both. So I'm going to do my best to keep this the sort of channel where people can watch the way they want to watch and watch what they want to watch, and I'm totally fine with that. I was surprised I admit that the comments I made about religion in Mass Effect Andromeda and how they made it sort of a weird thing hit the nerve they did. And I will keep that in mind in future because obviously for me, I am a religious person. It was Passover last week and I was accordingly bloated and miserable. And I don't do it because I have this superstitious belief in a sky god. I do it because of the whole purpose of making yourself miserable with crackers that make you constipated and swell up like a balloon, at least in my case. Overshare, I know, but we are very fortunate in North America. I think people are especially fortunate to live in Canada. We live in a pretty great country, and our lives are pretty comfortable. And I find that things like Passover and doing, religious rites that make yourself a little bit uncomfortable help with empathy. They make you more aware of the struggles other people are facing. And the whole idea of Passover is it's supposed to remind you of slavery and tyranny and suffering. And there's places in the world right now where people are in really bad ways. You see these images from the news and these, cities that are reduced to rubble and people living with, electricity brownouts and food shortages and, a lack of clean water. And you can see that. But to be reminded even of a little bit of discomfort, it makes it hit home in a much more visceral way. And I think that's important. I think that makes me better at what I do. And so I'm really glad that, I'm able to speak for certain things like that. Because I know that people who still practice religions often feel uncomfortable to speak about it. I know that I've had people pick at me for, well, you're a logical person, how can you do this and all this stuff? And it's like, I wish people would ask what somebody gets out of whatever religion they practice before they start dumping on it, but I feel that about so many other things as well. Being critical about something, being a critical thinker is great, but when you jump to criticize before you have all the information, well, that's not fair criticism. That's bordering on just speaking for bigotry, and I have no time for that. So I'm glad I could be helpful there. I really like it when people feel like somebody's saying something they would like to say but don't feel empowered to. So I'm also going to try to ask, just answer questions this week, because I feel bad when this channel gets derailed by people who don't know how to treat others with respect. And so I feel like the positive comments have gotten short shrift. So I'm going to try to cover as many comments this week as I possibly can. One asked me about eye strain and how I deal with it. Yeah, the yellow glasses are a part of that. Another that I'm really bad about is not using computer screens in dark rooms. I try to, it's that sort of thing of you want to be environmentally friendly, so you turn all the lights off, but then it borks your eyes. And if you can keep the lights on, keep the room as bright as possible when you're using your computer. That is how I get into trouble. I start using bright computer screens in dark rooms, and it makes my eyes work too hard. That being said, the yellow glasses, I'd like to kind of upgrade mine, but it is what it is for now. They do help a lot. I was embarrassed to start wearing them at first. Like, oh wow, people are going to ask me why they're yellow all the time. But they made such a difference that now I very rarely wear contacts anymore because it just feels so much better for my eyes not to be burning all the time. It does help a lot. So you're ever having troubles with eye strain, I highly recommend getting you don't have to have this yellow. You can get like this very slight amber shade that is less noticeable. And it absolutely helps a lot. Within 2 weeks, I felt things calming down. Now I'm having issues with allergies on top of everything else. That doesn't help either. So, and then also get a decent pair of sunglasses, especially if you have light eyes. I had this problem too. Eyes can get sunburned. So don't get the crappy little gray ones or the cute little, fashion colored sunglasses. Get a proper polarized pair of the darkest sunglasses you can stand and use them. It helps a lot because the sun, it's good for the vitamin D, it's good for your mood, but it's brutal. I mean, I am bred for cold, dark places, okay? I suntan inside. That's a joke, obviously. I don't suntan at all. But yeah, if you're at all light sensitive, if you're the human version of a mushroom, like me, it helps a lot to wear proper eyewear. The next thing I have is the comments on the I'll go to it now. I'll just go in order. Anyway, got a lot of response with people agreeing on me how Mass Effect Andromeda ruins the Krogans. And I think some people might be surprised to hear me defending this race of, gender segregated space lizard cavemen. But I think that the beauty of science fiction like this is that you can see what, the extreme version of this stuff looks like through sci-fi. And, the Krogans are a huge cautionary tale. They just destroy everything. That's what they know how to do. They break shit. And first of all, it makes them really fun in fiction, but also it shows their place because people take for granted our systems. People take for granted what we have and what we do in the modern world. And if we don't see an alternative in fiction, we forget why it's important to do some of this stuff. Being able to have a laugh makes social justice less annoying. And the fact that they change the Krogans that way. And some people said to me that the game starts before Mass Effect 2 or after Mass Effect 2. None of that is as important as, it doesn't, the point. I personally think the whole timeline is screwed if it takes place after Mass Effect 2 because the player has already made choices in Mass Effect 1, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that, these are Krogans who should not be that different from the Krogans in the original Andromeda trilogy, the original Mass Effect trilogy. And sure, there's variations among a race,
this planet could easily
but
solve all of our
there are
resource
certain
problems
cultural
on
traditions
P1.
of the Krogan that
Of course, first, we would need a couple of
the
deoxygenizers.
people who would
All the
go
living matter
out
would
on
just
an
be in the way.
expedition in the Krogans, I would think would even be
That
more
is any
aggressive
explorer's
because it's
jackpot
territorial
pile.
expansion,
We would be famous.
right? It's not the kindler, gentler Krogans that go out and work as mercs. It's the badasses. And so the whole thing's very strange, and it really did seem like a lot of copycat writing that really didn't understand the source material. And that's sad because that happens sometimes with popular franchises, that all of a sudden it's the thing everybody wants to write on, and so a bunch of people get hired based on who they know and not based on skill, because hiring in the video game industry is very, very insular. People are like, well, we don't get the applications. Give me a break. Most companies hire based on referral. They don't do these lengthy interview processes. Everything moves too fast. And so companies always have to have this sort of gut check of, are you sure hiring your friend here is the best idea? There's obviously a lack of internal debate at BioWare that's productive right now, and it shows in the final product. And this sort of segues into the ongoing debate we've been having on this channel about who is considered to work in a tech job. And a commenter who bothered to be polite and write a comment that wasn't just a series of insults and anecdotes zeroed in on something that I think requires clarification. It not requires, but it may make things clearer. When I'm talking about tech jobs, I am talking about people who work in the tech sector, meaning people who are influenced by the culture of the technology industry. The tech sector is extremely important to economies. The previous provincial government was very unpopular for giving Ubisoft a big bucket of money to open a studio in a crappy part of Toronto. Ubisoft Toronto was based in a shithole. And you see the improvements to that neighborhood since it's gone in there. Companies like this can save neighborhoods. They can make things a lot better. And as much as people don't like gentrification, this isn't like what's happening in Kensington Market that they want to put in a Walmart. Sorry, that's a bit inside for people who don't live in Toronto, but there's this uber trendy neighborhood that the locals let get run down. And so the only company that can afford to spend that much on real estate now is Walmart. And so they're knocking down this kitschy kind of market type thing to put in a Wally World. That's not what I'm talking about. This particular neighborhood of Toronto, the studio we used to shoot the old TV show in is right next door to where Ubisoft Toronto is. And that neighborhood was scary. We named this phenomenon that we called the storch. It's a porch and it's storage. People just had crap piled up on their porches. People took no pride in their property. It looked like a little mini Southside Chicago in places. And Southside Chicago is one of the most terrifying looking places I've seen in the first world. So it's very important. And similarly, it's similar to me, the people who are not in technical jobs in the tech industry are like civilians who work in the military and civilians who work in the police department. These people are very important ambassadors to the next generation, and I'm living proof of that. I mean, my mother was not college educated. She didn't even take, the science courses and the math courses that we take for granted now. Back then, school was very segregated. You were put into, I forget what it was called, like general or something else, but it was the 1960s and she was female. And so she was sorted into sort of secretarial skills and home economics. But she ended up getting a job at a university and she ended up working in the faculty of science. And so her children, my sister and I, were exposed to the sciences. And so we didn't see the sciences as this emerald city that we weren't allowed into. Scientists were people. We had a better idea of how it worked. We had we were seen more as in-group. And I think this is exceptionally important in diversifying the pool. I think that there is an element of not sampling. And I've said this before. Women don't even consider careers in tech because it's not even that they think it's bad. They just think they can't do it. It's too hard. If people like me could do it, why aren't people like me doing it? It's a lot of people are not leaders. And so they need a roadmap. They need to know how someone like them can get into this field. And I know that a lack of guidance when it came to computers really tripped me up because I didn't know. I thought as long as you got good grades in, maths and certain sciences that you'd have no problem applying to computer science at university. The schools I wanted to go to actually required programming portfolios. So they want you to know what they're going to teach you before you even get into the school. And this is one of these rackets with post-secondary education that they want to take credit for stuff students already know. That's why there's this crazy application process. So I was boned because I had no ability to go in there and because the problem isn't, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, especially about video game stuff. If you want to work in video games, your portfolio from school is not enough because everybody coming out of that school has that portfolio. You have to have stuff over and above what thousands of people are graduating with. And the only way you have that is the equipment at home. Well, my mother couldn't afford a modern computer at home. I was using a secondhand Tandy 1000 to do word processing for my school papers in the age of, like, you know, the flying toaster on Windows and early Mac computers. It was a dinosaur. You still needed DOS to get into anything. You couldn't do what was required on those computers. They didn't have enough power. And so, you know, there, and this is going to segue in, there's some people that made some really, I think, nasty accusations about me and saying I'm a tech imposter. I don't really work in tech. And I falsely want a tech job. And I don't know why this is productive. And I just feel like nobody would walk up to somebody like Cliffy B or Todd Pappy or Ken Levine and say they don't work in tech. Video games are tech. Video games, yes, straddle tech and the arts, but these guys are creating jobs for people in tech. Steve Jobs probably hadn't touched a computer in 30 years himself to code when he was the face of Apple. But I don't know of anybody who would say he doesn't work in tech. And we have to be very careful, because let me tell you something, nobody wants to work in a place where people are constantly going, you're not real, you're not real, you're not real, you're not real. And my thought is, if people are doing this to me, then it's happening to other people. And this is driving people out who really do deserve a place here. And that's my concern. That's why I keep on this. And so I hope people understand that. This may not be a problem going forward, because the person who made that comment also ended up getting banned this week. 2 people ended up getting banned this week, and it wasn't because of something they did with me. It was something they did on the dialogue options video this week. 2 people implied in the comments that the guests were lying about being assaulted. That is a non-starter to me. These 2 women, Megan and Heather, have been through the absolute ringer. It has taken them years. In Megan's case, it took years to get any sort of validation that something real happened to her. She was accused of lying by the police. Essentially, her mother had to go in there and say, this is not the kid that, but a lot of mothers go in there and say their kid's an angel. And so, you know, it's a no-win, but Heather still doesn't have a tested kit. She still hasn't gotten that from the system. And it's hard for, you know, they happen to be women in this case, these women to come in here and talk about their experience and talk about the ongoing shaming and invalidation that they experience in trying to speak their truths, in trying to challenge the existing narrative that has a lot of Hollywood money behind it and a lot of vested interest from a TV show that we happen to know as gamers misrepresents things in order to get ratings and set a particular narrative about sexual assault. And I will not, I have said over and over and over again, I do not tolerate guests being attacked. Criticized, yes. But you do not show up at this channel and say that victims of stranger rape secretly don't want their kits tested because their lies will be exposed. No, no, no. That is such a huge cross line. And it happened to be 2 of the people that were identified as problems before this. And so that, like I said, I got it to the point where I felt confident that if things continued, I could get rid of them with a clean conscience. They have been banned from the channel. No, I do not. I mean, just on a human level, it angers me that someone would accuse someone of lying without evidence. Because these aren't statistics anymore. These women are not, that 8% who do lie, and we know it, regarding sexual assault accusation. These are real women, and you can judge their credibility and you can judge their stories based on the details of their cases. And just know, we need a basic level of humanity here. And it is hard enough for me to get guests, especially in gaming, because, you may notice there's not a lot of developer interviews that go on outside the main sites because they don't want to get attacked. And like I said, there's a difference between attacks and criticism. Criticism is questioning, like, when you said this is my concern with this comment. That's totally fine. But when you're calling someone fake or a liar or any of these accusations regarding credibility or honesty, and you have absolutely no evidence but your opinion, no, that's an attack. And extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and people don't have any in these cases because they're the ones that are telling the falsehood. And this is something I feel very strongly about, because there was another commenter on Monday who took a big risk and was very honest about their own anxiety condition, and they did say they commented less on this channel than they otherwise would because of some of the other commenters, and these happen to be the people that got banned this week for being complete assholes. And the other comments that you guys left on Wednesday's video with Megan and Heather were so powerful. People were saying, I didn't know a lot about this. This made me feel sick in places because I didn't know. These are important stories to tell. These are important things to get out there. And we have to have a basic level of fairness that people who have been through traumatic events, and it's confirmed they were, in Megan's case, they actually, when they finally tested her rape kit, they found out that yes, the DNA sample belonged to a known serial rapist. There is no reason to accuse Megan Ebos of lying. And this comment is just counter to the facts. And when you start going counter to the facts, I'm sorry, you don't belong here. The entire purpose of this is facts over feels. And I wish people would spend more time looking at their own feels. Because I'm not saying people shouldn't feel. Quite the opposite. I think that when you start denying your own feelings, you become less logical. Because we do feel. And feelings are an important first step to logic. But what you have to do after that is figure out, why am I feeling this way and how does this connect to what's real? And I think that because everything is so crazy right now and we're dealing with multiple sets of so-called facts in hyper-partisan politicized news, it's hard to know what's real. And that's why I do my best to provide first-party sources, to do my own analysis, to not, get my information secondhand from Kotaku and places like that. Kotaku did an article this week about cockroaches in gaming systems. And, the headline was, why are so many cockroaches in my PS4? Well, you read the article and it has nothing to do with the PS4. The Xbox Ones get it too, but it's just because it's warm and dark where they're stored. But, people who just read the headline and, didn't read well down in the latter 2/3 of the article would think that PS4s have a roach problem. And that's the kind of stuff that I just find totally irresponsible in games journalism today. That's not journalism. That's just a stupid clickbait piece. Because, hey, guess what? If you got roaches in your PS4, you've got roaches in your house. And maybe you should do something about that and stop worrying about your game console, Kotaku. Like, geez. But somebody else asked about imposter syndrome and the difference between being discouraged from trying in the first place. And I've already talked about that to an extent. They're different things, but too much discouragement can lead to imposter syndrome later. And the interesting thing, because I'm pretty sure the person who's asking about this is male, and this is one of these things where it's more likely that imposter syndrome happens in women than in men. But I'm pretty sure there's a lot of men walking around with it as well, because there's so much fake it till you make it going on now. I see it in business all the time. People knowingly overpromise because they know if they're honest, people are going to say no. And that's got to weigh on you after a while. So this is something I really think we need to address from a gender neutral perspective, because, hey, if we do that, we can help everyone instead of focusing an approach on the majority and leaving out a sizable minority. That's the flip side to me being about, hey, let's talk about this stuff in gaming from a gender inclusive perspective, because yeah, console gamers are predominantly male, PC gamers are predominantly male, but we have a growing section that actually is female. So let's bring everyone along for the ride, right? Finally, leaving on a lighter note, 2 questions. One was, how do I do audio when I'm just shooting on my phone? Do I use an external microphone? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I use a Sony Xperia phone, and they are glorious in terms of camera and video and microphone and all this stuff. I keep hearing that Sony may close their cell phone division because it hasn't received appropriate market saturation, and I will cry if that happens, because they actually have true video in their phones, unlike the Samsung Androids that oversaturate with color to make it pretty for most people. But with me, because I'm kind of already oversaturated with color, I look really weird on a Samsung phone. And so they're amazing phones. The microphone in them is great, but you can also use the headphone jack. It is also a microphone jack. It's one of those little dual ones.
In some situations,
so you can actually plug in a wireless mic or I call them mini jack. They're the same as a headphone jack, but with more little grooves on the post. You can plug that into a microphone and use that as well. They're really awesome phones. If you're looking for something that's a cell phone but has a really great camera in it, get a Sony Xperia phone. They are fabulous. And I know that breaks my rule about not endorsing something I haven't paid for, but the reason I ended up trying this phone in the first place is my brother-in-law happens to work for Sony, and he had one, and he got me a unit to try. And so I got that one. That one didn't cost me anything, and I've been buying Sony phones ever since. That was like 3 models ago. We joke now because my phone's more up to date than his, and he works for the company. So that was a bit of disclosure there as well. See, I'm good at this stuff. Finally, somebody asked where Momo's name came from. And this is a really funny story, because when we got Momo was named Megan. He was named by our friend's 3-year-old daughter, who believed Momo couldn't possibly be a boy. He was too pretty.
Now it's time to fix the
And we wondered, do we keep this cat named Megan and have to explain to everybody that no, Megan is a boy? Or do we change it? And when we change an animal's name when we get him, we try to keep the name as similar to what it started as, because the first syllable is really important for animals. So Binky's name was originally Billings. Binky does not need a butler's name, right? Delilah actually came with the name Delilah. It was just too perfect. Lagarto didn't have a name at all because he was a street cat. And so Momo, we went from Megan to Morgan, because we were binge watching Chuck at the time, and I thought, hey, he's small and has a beard, and Chuck's friend on the show is named Morgan, and he's black and white and kind of tough, like Derek Morgan on Criminal Minds. So Morgan. Well, Momo hates being called Morgan. He doesn't like it at all. He doesn't respond to Morgan. he responds
clue as
to
to the
Momo.
whereabouts of your mobile
He
unit?
likes the name Momo.
She
And
went
Momo
looking for
has this
parts
very
to fix my
dismissive face when he's
communications.
deliberately
I
ignoring
tried to
me.
stop her,
And
but-
then, you know, so if he gets called Morgan, he doesn't care.
It is
When
the
I started
official opinion
calling him
of
Momo,
EU
because you know you do pet names
_1ATR
for
289×65
animals
that
like
mobile
Zelda,
units do
Zelly
not
Belly,
have gender.
and Scout is either Scouty or
Anyway.
Scout Scout.
Army was not designed for
Delilah
chaos environments.
is, I call her Ayaya
I lost her
because
signal
when she
somewhere
was a
to the
kitten,
south.
it was hello Delilah,
She was
and you
there.
go ah ah ah.
Then a second
Sounded
later,
like she was
she
saying
was
her name,
gone.
so it's like, oh, Delilah's her slave name, or her proper name is
Get
Ayaya,
moving, Ion.
and so
No
I
time
call
to
her
lose.
Ayaya. But
This
Momo
army must be
was the
saved
one he
at
liked,
all
so
costs.
that's where Momo's name came from, and he will be back on Momo Monday. Have a great weekend. And let's hope next week is way less stressful than this one was. Happy thoughts, good thoughts, everybody. Hope you like the Phoning Home gameplay. I really enjoyed this game. Might even show you more next week because I'm loving it.